Hello, my name is Thomas Masano, and today is April 26th, and I'd like to talk about Hitachi Data Ingester and the migration task. So we're working with version 6.1.2-01 in Data Ingester today. So just as a review, a migration task is scheduled, and it can be scheduled as little as every 10 minutes, or it can be scheduled once a day like a backup. It copies any files that are new to the HDI since the last migration, or that have been modified since the last migration to the HCP. So we can take a look at the migration by going to Tasks and Migration Tasks. And this screen will give us a lot of information about the actual task. So the name of the file system is FS3 for me, and we can see it's a middle priority. It's not a high priority, and it finished normally the last time it ran, and that was at 7:52. So we can click on that and see a little bit more about the settings on this. So I can see that it runs every 15 minutes with a maximum duration of 1 hour. So it's a little bit important to think about that because a successful and an unsuccessful migration or files in that migration, it could be that while it was trying to copy those files or migrate those files to the HCP, that either the HCP was unavailable, there was a communication link, maybe the HCP was out of space, but more than likely is that you ran outside of the window that you created here of 1 hour. So make sure you put enough time in there, because if you had put a lot of files on the HDI and you only gave it a specific amount of time to do the migration, if once it gets to that maximum duration, it stops copying files. So any files that didn't get copied or are in the middle of copying will be unsuccessful, and that'll be in the unsuccessful list, and it'll be tried during the next migration event. Okay, so that's the gist of migrations. So we can look at what were successful and not successful by, I'm sorry, going back to that same screen. I should not have closed it. We can go to download a report. And here we can look at list of successful and failed migrations, and we can download that. And here is a list of all the files that it copied and the path to those files. Now, if we had unsuccessful or failed migrations, we would also have a list, but I don't believe I had any. So it'll be an empty list. There's nothing here. Okay, so this only shows us the last migration. Now, what we have is a script that we can add to the HDI that will give us more information about the migration tasks, successful and unsuccessful, and also all the history of them. So it'll go back for as far as the migrations are kept and give you all the information. And we do that by going to the HCP. The HDI copies those lists up to the HCP on every migration event. And this script takes those files, downloads them, and adds more detail and puts them back on the HCP. So we can actually look at the namespace where the HDI put the information on each one of those migrations. So to do that, we can just go to the namespace. So for me, it's FS1 is the namespace, and then HDI is the tenant, and then the name of the HCP. So we can just go right there. Okay, so what we see here are what's called hash directory buckets from the HDI. And if we click on that, you can actually see the payload, and there's the payload from the HDI. Okay, but that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in the information about the migration event. So what we can do is go all the way to the end of this, and this is something that you're going to bookmark to make it easy for you, but I just want to show you how you can find it the first time. It's also documented in the information that comes along with the script. But if we go to the end, we'll see there is a management folder. And if we go into that management folder, there's something called migration results. So if we go into migration results, again, we see these gen folders, but now these gen folders hold information about the migration. It doesn't have the payload, it has information about what happened during that migration. So this is the HCP without the script added. So it's just these folders. We don't know much about them. We don't know when this migration event happened. We could look in here and we'll see two files, the migration success list, but we don't know when this ran really. We know when it was ingested, but we don't know a lot about it. So what the script gives us is a lot more information. So we go back up to this level here. So I'm in the file system and the management in the management folder under the file system. And now we go to the migration detail list. This is the directory, the folder that the script actually creates. And again, we'll see these generation folders or gen folders, but now they hold more information. So we'll click on one of these and we'll see that there's actually a failure list, failure list detail, and the same for the success list. But again, how do we know which one was run when? So again, if we go to the end and we go all the way to the bottom, there's actually a save history file. So it's save.history and then the name of the file system. So this is something you want to bookmark so that, if you want to check up on your HDI, you just click on this and you'll download this file and then you can open it and see actually what some of these events happen. So let's open this, take a look at it. And here we are. So these are all the migration events that it knows about. So these are actual migration events that were running while the script was trying to convert them. And then we can look down further and see all the migrations that happened. So if we look at, say, April 26th at 7 o'clock, and when it started and stopped, then that's something we might be interested in. This would typically be once a day, but for me it's every 15 minutes. We would know that at this date and time, that information is stored in this folder 768. So we can go look at 768 and we know, okay, now I know what these files are related to that previous date and time. So there is a migration failure list. So we can look at that. I don't think I had any failures, so this should be empty. And sure enough, it is. There's nothing in there. But if we look at the success list, we can see all the files that were successfully migrated during that migration event or that migration task. We can see all these files, okay? And maybe that's enough for you. Maybe that's all you needed and you just wanted to say, hey, I wanted to make sure some files went and there were no errors that happened, right? And this is good enough. But let's say you need more detail. Someone says that a file didn't get there or there was some sort of error that you didn't understand. Then you would go and look at the detail log. So again, I didn't have any failures. So let's look at the success list detail. So this is a comma delimited file, right? And it's best to look at this with, say, in Excel. So I created a little template in Excel and I just put some column headers in here so that it's a little bit easier for me to understand these. So we just go to data, get external data from text, and then we're going to go to those files, right? So I'm going to go to look to the file that I just downloaded, migration success list detail, and I'm going to bring that in. It is a delimited file. It is comma delimited. Make sure you change that. Next and finish, and then we'll bring that in. So now as you can see, again, we see the list of all the files as we did before, but it gives us a little bit more information. It says it was a directory or a file. It'll tell us what the timestamp is, actually when it moved. We'll actually get the URL that was created on the HCP for it. So you could actually use this URL to grab that data if you wanted to off of the HCP. And then there is the hash that was created for the HCP and the size of the file and the status. Now, when we look at a failed migration file, it looks a little bit different. It has a lot of the same information, but the status would be NG. And then it would also have another column that gave us information as to the error or why it didn't happen. So this gives us a lot more granular detail if it's needed. I mean, if it's not, you can just use the standard success or failure list if you just need a quick look to see what happened. But if you want to investigate farther, you would look into the detail. Okay, So now I'm going to show you how you actually install the scripts. Now to set up the script on the HDI, we SSH to it, and you used your favorite shell. Yes, I am a Windows guy and I like GUI things. So I'm going to connect to this guy. I've already created my SSH keys and set them up in the HDI, so as NAS root, so I have access. So from this directory, I can do a pwd. Then you need to upload the actual script that is provided to you by Hitachi. And then once that script is up there, then we need to expand that script. And we just do that by doing a tar. And it expands that file. Now, once we've expanded that file, we need to change what file systems that we are going to add detail to. So to do that, we need to edit a parameter.conf. So we can do that with VI. Okay, so we're going to add to this file the file systems you see here. Now you could put the actual file system name in there, FS1 or FS3, whatever I use, or you can use the asterisk. So I'm just going to use the asterisk here. And save this file. Okay. Just make sure we saved it properly. Okay, there it is. That looks good. Okay, so now that we've identified what files that we are going to change and give detail to, now we need to set the schedule that we're going to run this script on. So we're going to do a VI. Okay, so here it is. So this is the default that it's set up to is to run 20 minutes past every hour. So we can go in and change this if we wanted to. You would typically run this after your migration event. So if you start your migration event at 10 and then you set a limit that it has to be done by, say 4 o'clock in the morning, then maybe run this script one time at, 4:30. So the first time we run this script, it takes quite a while to run, because it goes back and it touches every single one of the past migration events. But if it's run every day, it has a minimal amount of effect. It's only going to process the files that were changed that day. So if you run it once after your migration event, you should be fine. So this is a typical cron file. If you want to change this, I'm sure you know how, or you could Google it. So we don't need to change anything here. Okay, but what we do need to do is to add that to the actual cron. So to do that, we do a sudo. Okay, so now this just added that information that we had to the actual cron, and we're all set to go. So this is scheduled to run. There's nothing else we need to do with this. It's all set. So on this schedule, it'll automatically start the event at the appropriate time, or we can kick it off right now if we want. And I think that's something I like to do because I like to watch it and monitor it. So to do that, we do a. So now what it's going to do is it's going out and it's grabbing all of those previous generation files, and then it's adding all the detail to them, and then it starts pushing them back up to the HCP. The first time you run this, it's going to take a while. And by a while, for me in my lab, it took about 15 minutes. So this is going to go back and get the last 7 days worth of files and start to convert them. So plan for that. But after that, it runs much faster because then it's only processing the last generation files that were created. And that's it, it's done. And so you've installed the script, you've converted the files, and now as I showed you previously, you could go on to the namespace on the HCP and actually look at the migration detail. I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you very much.